Hi there, I'm Coach Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And in this video, we're going to be talking to you about things that make no contact harder.
And it's already a challenge enough.
Why is it so difficult? It's difficult for so many of us. Mm-hmm. And when we had neglect in our childhood, when we felt abandoned, when we didn't get a lot of attention, or, maybe we had parents that had mental health problems, worked all the time, whatever it may be, we were hurt in those areas. And so now in our romantic life, it can be so difficult to have that space, because when we were small and we were traumatized by our parents, it feels like those things are happening to us again, and we're kind of taken back to when we were small.
Right. And so in this video, we're going to go over some of those factors that make no contact a little bit harder for some of us. Because no contact is hard enough on its own, and there are certain roadblocks that make it harder for others. So yes, attachment style, the way you were raised, traumas that have happened, those can definitely make somebody's absence much more difficult to bear. Mm-hmm. And it can be a lot more challenging to self-soothe in that time when you're feeling intense separation anxiety, especially if you have abandonment wounds in your past. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was a parent that left. Maybe it was somebody who represented a parent in your life that had left. And these wounds, they're very, very, very deep. And so our romantic relationships can sometimes mirror that or be an echo of past hurts.
Absolutely. And I've talked about that in my own personal life, mm-hmm. to share those experiences with you. So I know what it feels like, having my dad and my mom separate when I was like a year and a half old. So, my dad was really active and involved in my life. So then I had a lot of separation anxiety as a kid. And so that's why breakups were so difficult for me in a lot of different ways. And so I know what you guys are going through, because I lived that myself, and I worked through that for years, going to Margaret, talking about it, learning about it, researching it. And the more I educated myself and learned and eventually got into coaching you guys through it, the more I could share those things with you guys.
Mm-hmm. And there are also some other practical reasons as to why no contact could be more difficult. So we'll talk about some of those too.
Yeah.
Some of the very basic ones, having children together or having a business together. Having these kind of ties can make no contact feel like it's impossible. And it's a question we get often. What do I do in this situation where we have to talk?
Yeah.
Right? So it puts you in a challenging position where you have to learn how to co-parent or manage a business together and be able to compartmentalize the hurt and pain and anger and frustration that you have from the breakup to how you show up to the things that are important to you in your life.
And when those situations occur, that's obviously one of the things that we're going to talk to you about in coaching, mm-hmm. is a lot of those specific questions, because every situation is so unique for so many different reasons, and you listed like 5 of them in 3 sentences, right? So I'm thinking,
true.
boy, I'm spinning through all those different things, thinking mm-hmm. about, those are things we have to discuss mm-hmm. to get you in a better place on how to navigate it, because it could be confusing.
Oh yeah. So we're always here to help. Your maturity level will be tested in these kinds of relationships. Mm-hmm. And we warn you, just as a general warning statement, don't try to use your children or your business or those things that tie you together as leverage. Sometimes when we're in a very desperate place, we go to desperate measures, sometimes even using children as a means to try to get an ex back or provoke guilt or whatever it might be. So be very careful when it comes to trying to use kids or children to get an ex back.
Can you talk more about the guilt? Have you seen that? I've seen that a lot with people with guilt.
Guilt does not work in the way that you think it does, right? It might have worked when you were a small child, when you had those puppy dog eyes with your parents, right? And they might say, oh, okay, sure, we'll give them a cookie or whatever it might be. It's not going to work the same way with a mature adult that is your ex.
It might work every once in a while, but it usually doesn't last very long, and then you wind up in another breakup.
And it doesn't give you the outcome that you want.
Yeah.
And so you don't want somebody to be in a relationship with you because they pity you or because they feel forced or they worry that you won't be okay without them. You want them to
or
be...
the kids. That's
right,
a big one.
Right. You want them to be in a relationship with you because they love you, because they choose to be there. So just consider that.
Yep, absolutely. Another big one is working together. Okay, if you're in a situation where you work at the same place, the same company, sometimes you don't even interact a lot throughout the day. But if you're in some kind of setting, it could be a gym. I did a email coaching with somebody with a church recently.
Gym is a common one.
Very common.
So interesting.
Yeah. You've got to hold it together in those situations. You cannot come on too strong. You cannot bombard them. You need them to feel safe. If they don't feel safe, it's going to creep them out. How many times do you hear people getting creeped out?
Yeah.
The last thing you want is for a woman to say you creeped her out.
Yeah, and you don't want to stalk anybody. You don't want to follow anybody. I know it's tempting when you know someone's schedule and what time they're going to be at the gym, what time they're going to be in this rotation at work or whatever it might be. But just be mindful of that. You don't want to come across as if you are following their every move. You don't want to follow their every move.
No. And if they think you're following their every move, it's going to creep them out. Right? I mean, you hear it a lot. So you have to be cordial. You have to be polite. You have to be mature. Now, in many of these situations, we are not advocating for you to go out of your way and to talk to those people, because it's going to make them feel like, oh God, why are they coming over here? Oh, here they come. Oh no, I knew I shouldn't have come today.
You know what I see often too?
Yeah.
Is that a lot of times in these kind of situations, in heterosexual type relationships where the man approaches the woman, they'll say, oh, but she was so friendly. And then she blocked me when I got home.
She was so friendly. I don't know what happened. She said she was going to think about things, and now we've been blocked and the police are at my house.
Right?
What happened?
Just because, especially a woman comes across, friendly, and they are able to be polite, cordial, mature, all the things that we're wanting you to be and do, right? Just because they're able to be polite and maybe they come off kind, whatever it might be in the moment, doesn't mean that it's okay to continue pursuing them, especially if they don't reach out to you, especially if, they're not making those moves. So just be mindful of that, because I see a lot of things being misinterpreted, misread, and it can be hard. It can be hard to, try to read people and say, well, was this okay? Was this not okay? And you're looking at all the nonverbal cues and trying to make sense of everything. So if you share these kind of common areas, just be cordial, just be polite, try to maintain your distance, don't be overbearing. Just remember that.
Yeah. Don't abuse the fact that you're in the same place as them. They did not reach out to you. They did not break no contact, or they did not make an effort to connect with you. That's a different situation. But if you randomly bump into somebody at the grocery store, you don't go out of your way to track them down and try and talk about the relationship. They did not make that effort to say, hey, I want to repair this, or I want to talk about things. So it's going to make them feel very uncomfortable. And that is the last thing you want, is for people to feel like that they can't go out and live their life. You show up there at their church and they know you don't normally go at that day or time.
They're like, please, God, let them go away.
Yeah, that's why they're in church for the rest of the session. They're like, oh, please. Please let him leave.
I'm just kidding.
But it's true, because I had this happen recently. No. I literally had this happen recently where they went to the church and they're like, oh no, why are they here? They don't normally come in this day at this time. And they knew the guy was there, and it just made them feel so uncomfortable.
Yeah. And that's really the point we're trying to drive home, is safety. Right? So you don't want to have somebody feel unsafe, especially when they're at their, the place where they practice their faith or whatever it might be, places that feel like home to them. You don't want to disturb those places.
Absolutely. So you might want to adjust the routine, in some ways, not completely change your life around, but there can be some minor changes or choices that you can do that might make them feel comfortable, at least especially in those first couple of months where they might really get icked out if you show up.
Right, and you could choose to take a break from these things too.
True.
Another thing that can make no contact very challenging is if you're very close to their family members, or if you have a strong group of mutual friends. This can be extremely challenging because the temptation to communicate with those people is very high. They have a strong connection with your ex, and you want to be able to connect with your ex. And so it can be tempting to say, well, I'll just reach out to the family member and see how they're doing, or maybe a close friend. Maybe they can give me some insight. And remember what Margaret had said about the ubiquitous
third party.
That word, ubiquitous third party, right? So just be very cautious if you're in this kind of situation. Be mindful of those people's emotional ties with your ex. And sometimes we think that somebody's in alliance with us, and they might be in alliance with them and just rat you out.
Yes.
So
yes,
just be careful.
That is a very good point. I had a client recently that he worked with her family. Okay, he worked for the family business, and so it was challenging because they didn't want them to break up, so they were kind of on his side. But that doesn't last too long. Ultimately, they're going to side with their daughter, their son, or whoever it may be, and you're going to get ratted out, in some way or another. That info is going to get back to them. Now, listen, if they want to use that info to get some about you, let them get some of that info about you, as long as it's good. Not that you're desperate and you're dying inside. But if you want to present to them that you're doing well, or that there's some things you're working on, and you kind of know it'll get back, that's okay, as long as it's not too obvious. Right? So
just be cautious.
Yeah.
All right. Another thing that makes no contact so difficult is ending on a bad note. So we as human beings, as, people who want to make things right, I'll say most human beings, not all, but most, we want to try to rectify things with our ex. When something is left on a bad note, when there's conflict between us and somebody else, it creates this kind of dissonance that's hard to sit with, especially for a long time, and especially if you're a very empathetic person, or if you're a person that's prone to feelings of guilt, right? So ending on a bad note, maybe thinking that they're mad at us or angry at us, our mind might say, oh, they hate us. I have to do something to make sure that, they know I'm not mad at them, or to try to get their forgiveness or whatever it might be. And so we might be spiraling on this, and we might have that tendency to want to over apologize. We need to be able to let things be. We need to be able to sit with whatever emotions that person might have, sit with their anger, be able to sit with the uncertainty of what they might be thinking and feeling towards you. So this is another one of those challenging things. When you end it on a bad note, sometimes those last moments can recycle in your mind over and over and over and over again.
I've had quite a few people actually recently that ended things on a bad note, and they're like, I just want to send this one thing to apologize and undo it. I want to undo it.
And most of the time, they've apologized profusely.
Yes.
That's the thing, right? So
I had a client recently, actually, I think you had this client too, that got some ill advice by another coach onto sending a message about how they were comfortable with the breakup and they were okay with it and they agreed with it when they didn't feel any of those ways. And so they sent this message about, I feel okay with this and I'm glad the breakup happened and I'm moving on and this and that, but they didn't really mean that, and they felt awful the minute they sent it. They actually kind of felt bullied into sending that text. So, it's tough because now you feel like you have to undo that, and he had to undo it. He felt like he had to undo it. I told him leave it be, but he wasn't going to do it.
And it's hard. I see people who have high levels of empathy, who have, high moral compass. It's hard for them to just apologize once, right? Because that feeling of guilt is very strong with them. They want to do things right. They want to do things by the book. And so there might be that overwhelming urge, So if you've apologized, if you've said your piece, you have to be able to sit with whatever emotions come up and just let it be.
I need to apologize about that last apology.
Ew. Apologizing again?
That last apology, it was really awful. I've got a new one. This one's good. But that's what it feels like. Yeah. You feel like, but that's not going to create attraction. Okay, so you can do it. We're not recommending it. It's going to probably go the opposite of how you want. You're going to be on an apology tour. You know what I mean? It's never going to end. Yeah. You're going to have a greatest hits tour of apologies.
And it also tells me that you might need a little bit more compassion for yourself too. Yeah. You got to ask yourself, do I forgive myself for whatever might have happened, right?
Yep.
All right, another thing that makes no contact very difficult is when you've had extreme communication and extremely frequent communication with an ex.
Good. Yeah. Good point.
And, you know, there's normal communication, right? We talk every once in a while. Then there's the couples that talk every day, that text incessantly.
100 times a day.
Exactly. And so
Which is probably part of the reason you're broken up, by the way. Right?
That's
let's
true.
be honest.
It's true. Don't mince your words. And so in these kind of situations, when you have those kind of routines and those patterns in your mind, it's very, very, very hard to break out of them. And so you might be, you know, after this kind of a breakup, looking at your phone all the time. You might be thinking about, you know, what they might be sending you, what they might not be sending you, whatever it might be. And so these things are hard to break, and it's hard to be able to do things on your own. It's harder to be present when you are with somebody 24/7. So this is one of those ones that is challenging.
But no matter what your particular difficulties are in no contact, you have to do your best. And this is why we say every relationship is different and every breakup is different. Because even in no contact, there are going to be a lot of different things that might happen to one person, but not another. Mm-hmm. Okay? So do your best to focus on the personal growth, the changing, the growing, the getting more confident. The Creative Healing course, the workbooks can really help you in those areas, and you're focused on something positive instead of what's going on in no contact.
Exactly. And if you're in one of these situations, hang in there and think about the spirit of no contact, right? I sound like a cult. The spirit of no contact be with you.
That's going to be a new YouTube channel, a new coach, the spirit of no contact.
Giving them ideas. No, but really think about, you know, what is the spirit of, oh God, the more I say it, it's just the worse it gets. But it's really all about being able to respect their decision. It's about being able to respect yourself, and it's about giving them space. So if you're able to, you know, think about what's at the core of no contact, why are we doing this to begin with? Whether it's difficult, whether it's easy, whatever it might be, but it's really to get yourself to a better place, right? So when in doubt, when you're in the most challenging situations, think about the core of it. What's the spirit of it? We're respecting them. We're respecting ourselves.
Yep.
So.
And yes, it does help reattract somebody when they have that space away to miss you, to reevaluate, and to think about, can we fix this? How can we fix the situation? Because they probably felt like they couldn't fix the situation. And that's a big part of why they left. In many cases, not in all cases.
Right.
So no contact can allow for a lot of growth and a lot of changes if that's where you're focused.
Exactly.
And that's where you put your energy. Okay, so hopefully this one's been helpful to you. The spirit of no contact
I knew you were going to say that.
is here with you. If you'd like to get our help personally, you could do that on my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype. Coach Victoria is also available for Skype coaching.
I'm here whenever you'd like to chat.
But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
May the spirit of no contact be with you. And we will talk with you soon.